Hi everybody, Kat here. Welcome to my channel. I'm glad you joined me today to paint this deer in the winter woods. I may have two videos of a different version of this coming out soon, and I'll explain that to you later. This one I'm going to attempt to do a slightly sunny winter sky, and the other one will be a darker, not darker, but the light will be coming from a different perspective. So let's jump right in. I have to get my brushes ready, which should have been done, so I'm going to use, this is a size 8 silver black velvet, and I'm going to get my, I have a pencil line that comes across my paper here. It's very faint. I'll do it darker. And I'll have a drawing of this little deer if you want to use that. It's just right there. So if it's higher up here and comes down here. So I'm just going to sprinkle the top with water. And I'm going in just around a circle with some, I'm going to do a nice thin Indian yellow. Just a very, 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 or Hansa yellow it's called. Just a really, really pale wash. If I could find my paints. Here we go. So right before I filmed this, I dropped an entire cup of tea all over the place. So that's why I sound a little frazzled. And that's more like a lemon. There we go. So I'm adding in a little bit of the Indian yellow, which is warm, and some of the cool yellow. And it's just going to go dab it around in a circle. I'm using this is more inexpensive paper. Luckily, that's what I spilled on. I was trying to use my Paul Rubens, and they have almost the same cover, these two, and so I took the wrong pad, but that really doesn't matter to me what I'm using. So I have a tiny bit here of, that's not a tiny bit, that is PV19. Oh, that looks brown. I don't like that. I wanted it peachy. Well, I guess it could kind of be peachy. Let's go in with this and see what happens. Just want to put a little bit of a haze around this. Maybe I'll go in with some orange instead. I have a bit of orange. I'll add that to this and see where we get with that. Just going in a circle. This is going to be mostly covered with trees very soon. I just wanted to have a little bit of light in the sky. Most of the time when I do a winter setting, it's very, very bleak looking, and so this is kind of nice for a change. So I'm going to spray, keep everything nice and wet. I'm trying not to spray down here where my snow line is, because I don't want that wet yet. So to start with, I'm going to block in some greens, and down here I'm going to block in some mauvey colors, but I'm going to get quite dark. So I'm going to mix with this some ultramarine blue. I'm going to go in with, when you're mixing your colors, that often happens is you put too much of one thing, excuse me, and not enough of another. And I'm going to need some Payne's Gray as well. There we go. So if you don't have Payne's Gray, you can use indigo. Just going to bring the water down here because I need it to come down, but I don't want it to go past that, the deer. You can make any animal you like. So both videos I will have this deer. It's the same one. Okay, so there's going to be some dark here. I'm going in with some of this purpley going to take some, this is called Bright Rose. I think it's like an opera rose. And I'll tell you, it is called BR 12. So it's a bit fugitive, which means that it will fade if you hang it in the sun. But I won't be hanging this anywhere in the sun, so that's okay. Whoops, I went over my line. Like I said, I didn't want to. So once I have this beautiful color here, I'm going to add a bit more. I'm going to put this with my purple. I want to mix it. And I'm going to make sure that this stays nice and wet. I have my paper on a, so you don't get too much glare, but you're really getting a glare. I'm going to pause this. And then behind, I'm going to go with some nice green. I'm going to mix my own sap green, so I'm going to use green gold. With some cobalt. This cobalt is not the same as my other cobalts, but it's beautiful all the same. I'm going to tell you the number. It is PB, I don't have it. I usually write it down. Oh yeah, PB29, but it is not the same PB29 as ultramarine blue. Just be sure of that you know that it is not the same as ultramarine blue. So we're just adding in some green up here because I want it to look like some trees off in the distance. And there's going to be trees all over the place here. Now it's closer to the sun here, so you're not going to have as dark. Your trees won't be as dark over here. But that can be fixed later. Don't fret about it. When you want to make your trees darker, you're going to add in more of the blue so that the green isn't so pale. And if you find it too bluey, you can just go in and get a real green if you like. Add some red, anything for variation. Getting some nice little runs here. Sometimes it's harder to get on a less expensive paper. I'm trying my best to keep all this wet because we need some salt in here. And, oh yeah, that's beautiful. You just want to put a bit of dark here and there. Okay, so it's going off into the distance. I'm going to go in with, I think, a different shade of the green. Just so that you have some variation. And they're far away, these trees, so they don't have to be in great focus. And this is Hooker's green. And while this side is wet, I don't want to wait any longer. I'm going to add some salt. Especially right here. Right along that mauvey area, because that is going to be like a frosted looking bush. And you can add a bit on the green as well. Not overly, don't overdo it. I'm losing a little bit of my sunlight there. So I'm gonna try and add a smidge more of a nice, just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of pink into this peach. Just a little bit like that. Now over here, I'm going to make it wet, and this is where the snow stops here. So I'm going to wet it all the way down to that line. And it's okay if things run. This kind of painting is you want things to run. It just makes things look interesting. So over here I'm going to do it a little darker since the sun seems to be this way. I'm going to make it a little bit darker over here. I'm going to use my ultramarine right here. And I'm going to mix it with the cobalt, I think it was, that I used before. I'm going to come down here with that. Just because it has a bluey glow. I'm going to add some greens and stuff to it later. And you can try and keep some of the light behind as well. And I'm going to go in here. That is the Payne's Gray. More purpley here. Okay, and I think I'm going to put a bit of that pinky here too. Just so it's not too, just so it's not too purple. That's okay if I added that in. Adds a bit of interest. And there's more green up here because there's some trees growing over there. I'm going to add some of this Payne's Gray to this green. See if we can get a nice dark green. There we go. I'm just mixing a bunch of stuff that's on my palette. And maybe this won't make sense to you until you see it later, but it sure will soon. I'm just trying to add a tiny bit of color there because this little guy's going to have some antlers, and I just want them to stand out a little bit from the background so we can see them. I went a bit wet there. And don't worry, if you mess up your line, you just repaint it. You can always go in with white paint later. So for this side, I'm going to use some salt as well. I love salt on these paintings. I'm not going to do as much as the other side though. Or at least that's what I say now. I never stick to what I say. So that will look like frost on the leaves, and that's catching on the leaves, and I think that would be good for now. I am going to allow this to dry by itself. I do not want to use my hair dryer because the salt needs a bit of time to work. And sometimes it's a hit or a miss with salt. Sometimes it works really well, and other times it doesn't. So before I do that though, just so you see what I'm doing, I'm adding a teeny bit of that peach up here. There. Just very faint. And I think here, just for some interest, I'm also going to add a teeny bit of that mauve, very, very watery, and I'm going to put some shrubbery here. I'm going to make a shrub here. Very, very, very faint. Not as much as here. And I'm going to put some dark green. Just so it looks like there's a bush under there somewhere. I'll go in a bit more with the purple. Some of this pink. I think that I love that pink actually. You just have to watch, because if you add purple and the pink to the green, because they are in the red family, they cancel each other out, so they make like a browny gray. Just wanted to soften that out a smidge. And I'm going to salt this as well. I'm going to try to direct the salt onto the pink and purpley parts. But it's going to be hard not to hit the green. Okay, so we will let this dry naturally and turn your computer off, go get something to drink or eat, and then come back and join me to finish this. So I'm back now, and as you can see that the painting has taken on a new look. The salt kind of took out a little bit too much paint. So what I'm doing here is going in with the same color I have underneath, and I am adding some definition to the tree branches and also at the same time adding depth. So I still want that frosty look, but it kind of looked pretty washed out because I was a little heavy-handed with the salt as usual because I was afraid it wasn't doing its thing again. So I sped up this video, though, this half of the video, because it took a good 2 hours to do this painting, and there's no way anybody would watch this for 2 hours. And I really want you to try the painting. It's one of those painting that looks complicated and yet it's not. It's so easy. So over here too, where I'm using my blues and my green blues to do the same thing. You're going to see me do this throughout the whole background. So, because I do want you to know that these are trees, right? And that's green, so I'm using green. The green gold is what I'm using, and then I add some of my cobalt blue hue, and it makes like a sap green, just like it did in the beginning of the painting. And so I just want you to recognize these as trees, and I don't want to overdo it, but I'm just going by my gut, which is what I want you to do as well. Just sit there and people often will say, how do you know when you're finished? Or how do you know when you're not finished? You just know. When you don't have anything more to give to the painting, that's when you know you're finished. When I'm finished will be different than when you're finished. So just play around, and there is no overworked scenario here. You just paint until your heart's content. So I'm also doing this little shrub here. And what I like about this little magical frosty forest is that it kind of looks like there are flowers that are still growing, and this snow came quickly and there was a big frost, and so the flowers are still alive under the frost. That's the impression I'm getting as this develops. And this is my Princeton snap. It's a size 4, and it's a tiny little shader brush, they call it, but it's nice and soft and firm, and so it removes paint quite well. And I just wanted to give the illusion of some branches and stuff inside there, and a couple of tree trunks on top. And I felt that I had lost a little bit of the sunlight, so I am adding some yellow, just very watery, very, very light touch. And I'm going to add it sort of working my way down diagonally towards the deer, all while not losing that white center. I just want it to be soft, though. Everything has a soft edge. So you see it peeking through there. So it gives the illusion that it's parting through the trees. It's shining right through. And this is shadowing for the deer. Now, I end up removing all of this because I don't like what it looks like. And I change colors right here. I go to turquoise and a bit of ultramarine blue. And I just found it much more suitable for the painting. The other one was too dull and dark, and this one worked much better. It looks a little more icy to me, and it blends well with the painting in the background. And this too, as you can see, I'm just using some dry brushing techniques, and it's very watery in some areas, just making it look like the snow is not one big flat surface. And I darken where the deer's feet are in the snow, so it looks like they're in the snow. Just adding a bit of depth here to the shrub. Kind of looks like lilacs to me. And right in behind here, I noticed it was a bit dull looking, which was fine, except that there are antlers on this deer that you can hardly see because the values are so similar. So I did want to darken up spots in the background. And I used some masking fluid for the antlers, and I used the MAC tack for the body. This is Jean Briand, and I put that everywhere where the deer had white fur, because if I leave it white, it won't stand out from the snow background, and this just adds interest. You can choose any color. You can choose mauve if you want. You can choose pink, blue, gray. Just don't leave it completely white. Now this pink, the bright rose and the burnt sienna mixed together, is a good shade for the inside of the ear. And all these little details, he's pretty close, so you do want to add some detail to this deer. Whenever anything's close to you, you see more detail. So, and that's the raw sienna. I'm painting a whole layer of raw sienna over his whole body. And I say he this time because he has antlers. So this, I'm keeping in mind the whole time I'm painting the direction of the sunlight. And which would mean that the back of him and his left side is darker, of course, than the very top of him and the front of his face. And it's you know, something you practice and you get better at as you the more you paint, the better at it you get. So I'm trying to make sure everything's nice and soft. So after the burnt sienna, I go in with a brown. I add brown to it to darken it, and I do more detail and more shadow. And I think my next video, or the next couple of videos, I'm going to discuss layering, because this is all about layering, and that is how you give definition to a form. So for example, even though his neck is in shade, you can still tell that it's round. And that's because of the different values of paint that you use and the layering that you use, that you do to establish these values. That was long-winded, wasn't it? So I'm adding a mixture of burnt sienna and brown here and there. And of course, the darkest parts of his legs are the ones that are farthest from the light. And the same with there. And this way he stands out from the snow. So where he's white, I soon decide to add a bit of ultramarine blue to the white, because there are shadows on him, on his white legs and his white back, his hind legs. Adding a few little touch-ups, and I'm making sure he's very dry before I erase the pencil lines that I hate so much. And now I'm adding a bit of texture to his fur. Because he's close up, you can see, I want you to be able to know he's close up by adding more texture to his fur. So they're very small, stippling kind of brush strokes. And I'm playing with my burnt sienna and my brown. I'm alternating between the darkest and the medium values. And what you don't like, you blend in with a damp brush, just like I'm doing right here. And I think now he has a lot more definition. This painting was a lot of fun to do. I hope you try something like it. It doesn't have to be, it's just an idea. It's just to give you an idea of how I go about doing things and why I choose the colors I choose. So I'm going around his ears here with a teeny bit of white. I didn't really like it much, but I didn't bother to remove it because there was white fur there, but I really don't think I had to do it. Darkening his eye and his nose. And now I'm putting in some little tiny grasses that are poking through the newly fallen snow. And adding some white paint here and there. Just that, once again, is to give it a tiny bit more sparkle. It already looks like there's snow and frost on the branches, but this changes the value, right? It's even lighter. So it just gives it that little added extra oomph. A little, like, it looks like gems, like more jewel-like. I want to apologize for the erratic lighting in this video. I will double check my settings and make sure it doesn't happen again. Thanks for your patience. And now here I go. If you've watched my videos before, you know that I get more on my glasses and the camera than I do on the painting, but I'm splashing in some white just here and there, not to make it look like a huge snowfall, just a few speckles here and there. But you can go as heavy-handed with that as you feel fit. And like I said, this was a good 2.5 hour painting, excluding the drying time. Because the dry time, the first part where the salt is, that's a long time to dry. Now I added some salt in here because now you can see that there's ground underneath that shrub, and I thought that added a lot to the painting. Here is the finished painting. I hope you like it as much as I had fun doing it. If you like this video, please consider giving me a like and subscribing to my channel. Also, don't be shy to leave me a comment. I really love to hear from you. Your feedback is very important to me. Happy watercoloring. Bye-bye.